There is a misconception about money that it's mostly about how much you earn. Like a lot of people think that, and they think if I just earned more, that would be the answer. That would get me out of it. Our next guest shares my view that so much of financial well being is about habits. And he's actually written a book with the word habits in its name. And he argues that it uses the habits that you already have. The book is called The Money Habit. Its author, Mike Michalowicz, joins us now from Boonton Township, New Jersey. Hello there.
That's right. Oh, you got the township part in there.
Oh
Bruce, I'm
yeah,
doing well.
I
It's
am.
good to
I'm a
be with you.
journalist. I want to make
Yeah,
sure
I
it's
love it.
accurate.
I love it. It's good to be with you.
Your wisdom in this area is hard earned. The story of you sitting your family down on Valentine's Day,
Yeah.
including your kids, to let them know that you'd lost it all is really compelling. What was that like for you on that day? You go back to that day. What was that like?
Yeah. I mean, we're gonna go deep quickly, and so I'm gonna start cheering up. You said earlier when we were talking offline that you were bawling when you were talking to a mutual contact of ours, a mutual acquaintance. And I'm a co-crier, so if I cry, you cry, I vomit. It just goes bad. I I the quick backstory is I've been an entrepreneur my entire life. Had a couple exits, made millions in my early 30s. I thought it's God's gift to entrepreneurship. Not. I come home a year or two after starting my second business to tell my family I've lost it all. Because what I had done is just egotistical spends, buying things, the place in Hawaii for sabbatical, everything. And just the same as lifestyle became a angel investor. I now call myself the angel of death because I blew that money. I had no idea what I was doing. I'm bawling because I'm telling our family we're going to lose our house, which we did. We lost it 30 days later because of my financial misgivings and mistakes. And my daughter, she volunteered her piggy bank. She ran to her room. She was 9, grabs her piggy bank and says, Daddy, I know you can't pay for our bills anymore, but I will. And it was just so, oh, I get chills. It was so humbling and shameful and embarrassing. And it became the great reset for me. One little bow tie around this is not in that moment. It was like the next morning I woke up and said, I'm going to address all the money woes I have and fix it for
Mm,
everyone that I can.
mm.
No, I woke up and started drinking and
Mm.
went through 2 years of depression. It's only in reflection do I see that is the inflection point for studying money and really understanding it. I never understood it before.
It's important to me that we begin there because your transformation of your mindset and your habits was hard won and took time. And so often we like to look at the 30-second Instagram reel in which it all became so clear. I am going to leap forward in time and ask the second logical question is how did you recover from that as, in terms of your financial situation, but also as a dad and husband and human?
Yeah. It's funny as an entrepreneur, I think for many of us, regardless of what your career choice is, we define ourselves as providers, providers
Mm.
for ourselves and our family and our community and our globe. And that was the one job assigned to myself. So first there was an identity crisis. It's like, I can't even do the one stinking job I committed to provide at any level. The second thing I realized is I remember saying to myself, if things ever got so bad, I would do anything to support my family. If that meant working at McDonald's, not that it's a demeaning job. Fat ego Mike considered that entry level and demeaning. I'm like, I'd even work at a McDonald's. No, I wouldn't, because I was in that circumstance where I should have. And I didn't have the courage. It was too embarrassing. And I'm ashamed of saying that, but it's how I felt at the time. But then started having this realization is no one cares about what you have. And the people who do care, they vanish and go away. But really, my true friends are like, you're still Mike, you're still same guy, just
Yeah.
don't have anything. And that's when I realized like all these things I was doing to show the effects of success was of no impact to the people that mattered. And it was hard for me to swallow because I'd be the first one if you and I were in a conversation say, oh, did I tell you, Bruce, I just bought my third car today. Like I was so arrogant. Oh, it's
Mm.
disgusting now.
Mm.
So that began a turnaround. And I just started doing some consulting work and just trying to generate income. But at the same time, I started investigating all of the established axioms around how money management works. That, maybe it's about through deprivation, maybe it's through budgeting, maybe it's through investing or day trading. I looked at all those things and said, oh no, there's a foundational truth about how we manage any resource, money, time, anything, relationships. And once I started understanding that and applying that to money, it started the transformation for me. And
your first book, called Profit First, focused on entrepreneurs. This one's for everybody. Tell us about the foundation of the money habit.
So it's rooted in a few behavioral principles, but the biggest one is I leverage a thing called a commitment device. My own terminology is a behavioral intercept. What I mean by this is if you look at a pattern in your life, whatever it is, that you repeat subconsciously, that pattern is so ingrained in us that if we try to divert it somewhere else or behave differently, it's a very difficult thing to do. So in the monetary scenario, most people say, well, I'm not disciplined with money, therefore I'm going to deploy willpower, I'm going to be very disciplined with money, I'm not going to use credit cards and all these different things. But we give in. Willpower is like a muscle, it fatigues. Behavioral intercept says, no, keep doing that, quote, bad behavior or existing behavior, but put some device in there that's going to direct you on automatic to the outcome you want. So the best analogy I have, and I'll tell you how it applies to money, is with exercise. I committed to start exercising regularly. This is now about 15, 16 years ago. And I tried to use willpower, and that worked for a day. I went to the gym. The next day, I was so sore, I didn't work out again. But I started looking at my behavior. What I noticed is I'd wake up in the morning, go to the bathroom, have a cup of coffee, scroll through the news, and somewhere in there, I was losing the plot of working out. So I put my sneakers on my toilet seat. And I still do this. When I wake up, the only way to go to the bathroom is by grabbing my sneakers. That's the commitment device. It's in my hands, no denying it. Put on my feet, and now momentum kicks in, and I exercise, pretty religiously. Now, with money, the number one behavior that walking to the bathroom or getting the cup of coffee is logging to your bank account. I've surveyed informally and formally so many individuals, and I would say it's over 90% of people that log into their bank accounts at least once a week. More often, it's daily, and for many people, it's a couple times or more a day. What I tell people is that is your best behavior. We just need a commitment device at your bank. And what the commitment device is, it's real simple. It's the envelope system. But we do it at the bank level. We set up multiple accounts at your bank with multiple purposes. So one may be labeled groceries, one could be mortgage, another one could be vacation. And when money flows in, we carve it up before we spend it. And now, when you log into your bank account, you know what money is available for what purpose before the spend.
It's a pretty compelling and simple system. Income comes in, but doesn't stay there. It goes to a whole bunch of different places, as you say, needs, wants, dreams, you call fix or future, and emergencies with percentages. How do you figure that out? Because one of the concerns that a lot of people talk about, in Canada in particular, is the cost of living when it comes to housing. And there's, depending on where you live, it's very difficult to find a percentage that will allow you to have a roof over your head, plus pay for groceries and a little bit of something to set aside for emergencies.
Yeah, I did a analysis and research on what they call first world countries, generally Europe, North America. So Canada, Mexico, US, and Europe, and found what the average norm was. But there is a behavioral trick in here. I'm all around behavioral mechanisms and psychology. And I'll share this because you and I suspect do similar things for our career, speaking engagements. Well, there was supposedly, and maybe this is mythology, but it's a great story. A aspiring speaker goes to an event to get trained on speaking in what they call back of room sales, when people run to the table. And the presenter says, following these 5 steps, you should get an 80% close rate. So this attendee now starts speaking, and her first year of doing this, she's like a 27, 28% close rate. She's frustrated. She works harder. She figures out how to get to 50. After year 3, she gets it to 74%. She can't get beyond that. So she comes back to this instructor and says, listen, I've done everything I can to achieve what you've said. I can only do 74%. And he looks around and says, you thought I said 80%? I said 18%. 18%. The funny thing is, it's called Parkinson's law. It's a behavioral mechanism. When we anchor onto something, we move toward it. And Parkinson's specifically is around resource utilization. So ironically, it can work against us. the more money we earn, the more we spend, according to Parkinson. But when we constrain the supply of money, we work it within the confines of it. Those percentages are setting up these confines, if that's the right word, these containers to restrict the spend. And what's interesting is it's human nature to comply with it. So they are research-based, but even if they were arbitrary for your exact scenario, most people will find a way to still work with it.
Uh, we live in a cashless society to a large extent.
Yeah.
I look at the graphic in the book that has people transfer money and use this mysterious thing called a debit card instead of a credit card. How do you encourage people to do that? Because I mean, it makes tons of sense. It introduces a little bit of friction that may slow things down a bit. But in Canada in particular, we're nuts about our points. And so people will often say, well, I'm just putting it on my credit. I'll pay it off in full every time for sure, but I want the points.
Yeah. And one thing that I'm sure your listeners are so aware of, credit card companies are optimized to generate income for themselves. And so they know every trick and trigger that will encourage us to spend more for credit cards. And they earn it two ways. One is on the transaction, they charge a merchant. Two, if you carry a balance, they'll charge you interest. So it's a win-win for them. So they want to entice you to spend as much as possible. So you reduce the friction, you remove the pain in the moment, and you give what I call false rewards, points and stuff. Dollar for dollar, and what the credit cards company versus the points they're giving to you, they're coming out net positive in a very big way. Yeah. So that also means if you didn't use credit cards, you would come out a net positive in a very big way. So I wanted to show you a couple cards I have. These are real cards. This is my wants card. You see it says written up there. Someone said, wow, it's so worn out. You have a lot of wants, which is true. This one, I even do this in my business. This is a debit card for my business. When I wrote Profit First, I teamed up with the bank and we made Profit First ones. Okay. I use this for my meals. The power of debit cards is we bring that pain factor back immediately. Now, remember the behavior. Most people log into their bank account daily or multiple times a day. So when I decide I want to go out for dinner with my wife, we use our wants category for this. I log in my bank account and say, oh, we have $500 in there. We can do a pretty intense, amazing dinner. Or we can stretch it and go out to dinner a few times this week or something like that. Right. After I go to the bank, to the dinner, when I log in my bank account the next morning or even that night afterwards, now I see that 500's dropped to 100. I feel that pain instantly. And then I make a subconscious decision, was that worth it? Yes or no? Yeah. With a credit card, I go to dinner and it's like, that was amazing. And it feels like it cost nothing because there's no transaction presenting that to you until 30 or 45 days later. So they delay the pain. So debit cards in that regard are very effective. We want to feel the pain because it contains our spend. You want your readers and people in general to experience something you call cash confidence. What do you mean by that phrase? Yeah, so I hear the phrase financial freedom all the time, and I think it's a very vague and therefore dangerous term. So financial freedom is like, I can say, hey, Bruce, it's pretty cold up here north, and where you are, it's even colder in Toronto than it is here, and it is cold. Yeah, we say, why don't we take our spouses and head down to the beach, and why not be in the Caribbean, and let's go by jet. Let's go by private jet. Financial freedom says you don't have to worry about any costs. It's covered. And we could therefore aspire to go to the Caribbean by private jet and say, we're not going to worry about that. That's what financial freedom is. That's very vague because financial freedom by that definition is not accessible to me and not accessible to many or most people. So what I instead say is we need financial independence. And this is where cash clarity and cash control kicks in. Irrespective of your income, when you understand what money is available for what purpose, you start asserting control over your money. When all the money is glommed together, your income comes in and sitting in one account, and you're like thinking in your head, I got to pay for the mortgage, and I need to get food this week, and we wanted to go out to dinner, and you're doing all this math in your head, then money controls you. So we don't want to be controlled by money. We want to assert control over it. So you set these multiple accounts, carve out the money, and now we know its intended use. But there's one other, and this is perhaps the most important behavioral trick, is we are designed to cheat. The day will come, because I've done this, where I'm like, I really want to go out to dinner. There's only $50 in the wants account, but in my emergency account, there's $2,000. Right. Let's take $200 because it's kind of an emergency. Feels like an emergency. Papa's got to eat. Yeah. So here's what happens. You can and likely will cheat the system. I'm not approving that we should do that, but we will. But the one magical thing that happens is a subconscious behavior where we're doing all this math in our head. There's a chunk of money, it's whatever it is, and there's enough to go out to dinner tonight. Let's just take it, not thinking about the emergencies or mortgage or whatever. Now, consciously, I'm aware of I've made the decision to take from my emergency account and do this. So we now have conscious awareness, and with conscious awareness comes consequence. So if an emergency then comes up and we get burned, we'll say, oh, I remember what I did. I took that out for dinner. So that's the other power that happens. We will cheat, but at least we can no longer deny that we're cheating.
There are so many circumstances facing individuals in the world today. The rising cost of housing, questions about the economy, AI is going to take my job. It's a tremendous amount of noise and causes a tremendous level of worry. How do you acknowledge and validate the circumstances that people are in? They lost their job, they got divorced, and also stay true to this method that is super clear, super compelling, but that a lot of people would have a but about.
Yeah. So two little stories. The first one comes to mind is I've seen, and I've done this, celebrities or athletes come into god awful amounts of money. And what I have said, looking at that athlete, saying, and then you see them blow the money. I say, well, if I had that amount of money, I would never, ever, ever do that. And the reality is I probably would do exactly what they did if I don't have the understanding of how to maintain and control my current circumstances. Because there's this dispersion between my current income and what that athlete's making. And so my mind is working with my current lifestyle, just assuming that much amount of cash came into it. And of course I can manage it. But if you're living check by check now, as more money comes in, that behavior will continue on. So we have to have a foundational system first. So that's the first thing I say to people is, if you think whatever challenge you're facing right now, that more income is a solution, that is not the solution yet. The first step is more authority and control of your money before more income. So that's story number one. The second story that comes to mind is you can achieve anything you want when you have clarity. Only thing, or the variable that we have to be aware of, is the variable of time. If you make, and the average North American earner earns, and this is US dollars, $50,000 a year. So very similar in Canada. And $50,000 a year is, and if anyone listening is earning more than that, you're above average.
Right.
I also want to acknowledge $50,000 a year time the average work span of 40 years, that's $2 million. So everyone that's at that level or more is managing millions of dollars over their lifetime. So you have to have a $1 million, multi-million dollar mentality. Well, say you earn $50,000 a year, and that means your paycheck coming in is roughly $4,000 every month. And you say, but I want to go to the Caribbean on my own private jet and not worry about the bill. Well, we're going to set up an account called the Private Jet Caribbean account. And we are going to allocate the money that you can allocate. But if you're earning $4,000 and you have other necessities like the rent, food, so forth, maybe past debt, you may only be able to allocate $10 every paycheck. So maybe you can only allocate $10 a month. Well, $10 a month times 12 months is 120. That means $120 a year you're saving for this trip. So you will do this trip. It just may take 5,000 years to get there.
Right.
And so the reality is anything's accessible with the variable and consideration of time. And then you make a judgment. Am I willing to wait 5,000 years for this? And if not, okay, then you can allocate it elsewhere.
Make some different choices. You have a whole chapter on crushing your debt, which is something that I care a lot about. I run Credit Canada. We're a nonprofit credit counseling agency. Debt's an enormous issue. How do you connect the money habit to this fairly specific part of one's financial life that so many millions of people deal with?
Yeah, the emotional weight of debt is extraordinarily costly from personal experience and from the folks that I have connected with and counseled with. I remember, and Bruce, I hope you've never experienced this, but I remember I had so much debt that I was getting notifications from debt consolidators, like these letters in my mailbox and collection notices. And I had a realization that debt is a public, it's public shame. Like the world knows about this. It is a public record, and these companies, anyone can access it. And my mailman knew how much debt I had because he
Right.
was seeing how many of these notes were coming in every day. So how do we manage it? First of all, be aware of the emotional cost of debt and the agony that so many people suffer from it. The second thing is we have to move out in incremental steps. Um, there's arguments for the behavioral suggestion of work with small amounts of debts to eradicate them quickly. That actually is
Yep.
based upon B.F. Skinner's work of getting early rewards and mechanisms. There's the
The
other thing.
snowball and the avalanche.
Snowball, yeah, exactly. Right. That's the modernization of B.F. Skinner's work. There's the other work is the avalanche, where figure out what your most expensive debt is and target that, because logically that makes the most sense. And there's arguments for both, and I would argue you want to sequence from one and then flip to the other. But what we have to do first at the behavioral level, at the behavioral intercept level, is set up an account to address the debt. It is, I call it the past sin. There's something you did in the past that you couldn't or shouldn't have afforded, and someone else covered it for you. You have that liability. That's the past sin. So we're going to set up an account called Fix to eradicate past debt. We're at the same time going to freeze active debt. We don't want to accumulate more debt. And you mentioned credit cards. That is the most accessible and therefore frictionless and therefore painful debt that exists. So we're going to want to control our credit cards. I'm not the guy who initially says cut up your credit cards. There is value for credit reports and score and so forth. I don't really believe in the points, but yes, you can have points. But you can start controlling things like your credit volume or the credit that's available to you.
Yeah.
So if you have a credit card that has, say, $5,000 of credit, you can literally call the credit card company and say, I'd rather have that be $2,000. It's an awkward call because they rarely get that, but you are putting in a commitment device to control your spend. You're putting a new ceiling on it. This fixed account in your bank, we're going to allocate a percentage of your income there, and its sole purpose is to eradicate debt. That's how we work it.
I want to get to one other concept that you raise in the book that I think is really helpful for people to think holistically and through the fullness of time, which is what you call the financial seasons.
Yeah,
What are these financial seasons? And can I spend most of my life in summer? Because that is my preference.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Yeah. So the reason I chose seasons is because those are temporal states, meaning they have a lifespan to a period of time before they go away. When I interviewed people, and I did this myself, who were in debt in particular, they'd say, I'm in debt, which is a definitive permanent state, therefore identity. And if you say I'm in debt, subconsciously you're saying you will forever be in debt.
Yeah.
So what I tell people is, oh, you're in a debt season, but even debt is a negative turn. So I changed it to a positive turn. I call it the recovery season. So if you have debt that's a burden to you that you're not able to manage on a monthly basis and fully eradicate, I believe you're in a recovery season. And this is a period of time where we're concentrating some of our money, a large portion of it, if we can, allocate it to eradicating debt. The next account, or the next season, I should say, is the fund season. This is where we're preparing for a future event. Historically, it's retirement. There's a great book out there, Die with Zero, which I didn't want to love, and I loved it. And they made an argument is that there's a health span that runs in parallel to our financial span. And sometimes it's better to wind down some of our cash. So maybe you're funding for that big celebration with your family or something like that, and that's before you retire. There is an activate season. This is where we're intentionally spending more than we're earning. You may be in that circumstance where you can do that. We have our family, all of our children are now adults and out of the house. My wife and I said we're going to go into an activate season over the next few years before they start having children, and we're going to do big family vacations. We're intentionally spending more than's coming in, but we went through a fun season to prepare for that. The final season, which perhaps is summer, is the balance season. This is where you're living in the now, but also preparing for the future. It's the perfect balance, and you're sipping, of course, on a margarita.
Really interesting perspective. Mike, congrats on the book, and
Thanks,
thank you
brother.
for joining us today to talk about it.
Thank you.